Hey everyone, this is Mr. Lane. I'm here to tell you all about evolution, and more importantly, we're going to learn about the evolution of evolutionary thinking today. You might be asking, why do we have to learn about evolution? Well, that comes from this quote right here. Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. That it's so important that it's going to link all of these different topics that we're going to be learning about through the entire year together. So we better start off with this and very important topic if we are going to truly understand and appreciate the topics we're going to explore later. So I like to call this one the evolution of evolutionary thought. In other words, we're going to learn about mostly old dead white guys and the ideas they came up with that led to Darwin's thinking and the formation of his theory of natural selection. So here's your learning targets, your learning objectives. I want you to be able to explain how contemporary scientists influenced Darwin's ideas of evolution. I want you to explain why Lamarck's theory of evolution is invalid. We're actually going to explore that in the next video. And I want you to give three scientific examples of scientific discoveries or hypotheses that influenced Darwin's theory of evolution by means of natural selection. So we got to go way back if we're going to start here. We got to go back to before there was even photographs and just sculptures of old guys. First, it was Aristotle. Aristotle was one of the first to propose that species were arranged in a particular order. He said that they were ordered by their complexity, humans being the most complex, and things like slugs and the little creepy crawlies least complex. He said that these were fixed creations, meaning that they didn't change over time, and that the Earth looks the way it does today is kind of the way it's always looked. And when you think about that idea, it seems kind of crazy today, but if you were in Aristotle's time, his worldview was quite limited. He didn't really understand the world as a whole. He didn't have Google Maps to go and look at everything. He didn't have this information. And because of that, that idea lasted about 2,000 years until the age of exploration. And that's when things get interesting. Not until about 1750 here, we get this guy named Carl von Linné, or Carolus Linnaeus, who in second semester, we will talk about why he was the biggest nerd ever. He was the first one to propose that organisms can be classified on their atomic structure. This is kind of a breaking revelation that we can classify things based on how they look on the inside and how they're structured, rather than just the way they look maybe only on the outside. He invented this idea of a species that we still use today. In fact, it's the two names that we give to all species, the Homo sapiens, Canis lupus, Mulo, Bulo, Buteo, Genesianus, all of these really sweet scientific names that make you sound really nerdy when you know them. He's the one who invented them way back in 1750. And that sounds like a long time ago, but that was really only 300 years. Then we get to the really cool stuff. About 1800, we started really putting pieces together. And when I say we, I mean we as a human species. Cuvier, a French guy, he was the first one to propose that earth-shattering, pun intended, idea that earthquakes and volcanoes and other catastrophic events can cause changes in the earth, and that the earth looks today nothing like it used to look because of these catastrophic events. He also proposed that a species is not a fixed creation, and that species can go extinct. Now, 1800 is kind of interesting because things like dinosaurs hadn't even yet been coined. So this is a pretty new idea. Dinosaurs weren't discovered until about the 1820s, and that was kind of the first big popular, this thing is no longer here, species can go extinct. Thomas Malthus is our next one. And he was the one, he's kind of a controversial character here. He's controversial because a lot of the predictions he made at his time did not come true. And they didn't come true because of other things outside of his control. But as we see our population growing today, we start to see and wonder if maybe Malthus was onto something. And indeed, he is. He said that populations have limits, that no population can grow uncontrolled forever and ever. And he said that they have limits because there is competition for limited resources. Now, Malthus's idea was centered around the French Revolution. He noticed that there was famine in Europe, and that famine led to unrest and then a decrease in population. So he said that because there was a competition for those limited resources, that served as a way to control populations and set a limit. Then there's my guy, Charles Lyell. Someday I will have sweet sideburns, almost as good as his. He was a friend and mentor of Charles Darwin. He literally wrote the book on geology. It was called Principles of Geology. And he was the first one to say that the Earth changes at a uniform rate. So he's building off Cuvier. Cuvier was saying that the Earth changes. Lyell was saying that it's not just changes, it changes at a very set rate. And today we know this as erosion, we know this as the tectonic forces. He says that mountains can rise and fall, and that is a very, very new idea. He proposed that the Earth was not thousands of years old, but millions or even billions of years old. And understanding the Earth and looking at the Earth in that context changes the way in which we see things. Now, think about this. We go back to Aristotle. His worldview was the Mediterranean, Greece, maybe Central Europe, Northern Africa. By the time we're here in the early to mid 1800s, the European perspective, the worldview, we know most of the world. We have all the coasts mapped out, that we have initiated transcontinental trade, that our worldview is much larger. We're starting to realize that things may not be always as they seem. So what? So why do we need to know about all these old dead white guys and what they said? They helped Darwin make inferences and make sense of the observations he had on his journeys around the world. When Darwin was in the Andes Mountains, he found seashells about 12,000 feet up in the mountains. And without the context of understanding these geological forces and how the Earth can change, a very different answer may come. But the inference that he makes there is that the Earth changed and that what is now on the top of the mountain was once on the sea floor. And he had actually firsthand evidence of this. While Darwin was off the coast of Chile, an earthquake happened that actually raised the sea floor about 10 feet out of the water. So what was previously 10 feet underwater, the next day was 10 feet out of the water. And as he moved inland, he realized that this same process had allowed those same shells that were on the bottom of the ocean the day before to rise up into the mountain. Darwin found large fossils of extinct sloths, and we are not talking little tiny sloths. We are talking big, honking sloths, about 8 feet tall. He found these skulls and bones of these things that weren't there anymore. He didn't know why. And he saw that there was competition for limited resources in almost all of his journey. So all the pieces had been laid. So Darwin was now starting to think about all of these things and how they fit together. But the really cool part about all of this is that Darwin wasn't the only one with this idea. There was also this guy right here with that sweet looking chair and that awesome hat. His name is Alfred Russel Wallace. He was the first, another one, not the first. He also said that organisms came from common ancestors. He proposed an idea that was so similar to Darwin that when he wrote a letter to Darwin saying, "Hey man, what do you think?" Darwin said, "I could not have written that better myself." And really, Wallace is credited with forcing Darwin to actually publish his ideas in his lifetime. Darwin didn't want to publish his ideas out of fear of offending his wife, and he wanted to have them published after he died. But after this letter with Wallace, Darwin thought that he would lose credit for his ideas. There's also another theory of evolution, and I don't know if I'd really call it a theory because it lacks something very important that all theories have. And this was Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. And we're going to come back and talk a lot about him. But he had a theory of evolution and how species changed over time about 40 years before Darwin. We'll talk a lot about this on the next video cast. So that's a little bit about how Darwin came up with his ideas, kind of the evolution of evolution. Next time we're going to dig into Jean-Baptiste here, and we're going to find out all about what he thought about species changing over time and how they did it. Hope that helps. We'll talk to you soon.